Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Writers Chat. We're glad that you're here. This is a gathering of writers where we talk about all things writers for writers, and we're really glad you're here or watching the replay. We get quite a few watching our replay each week, so we're excited. In our group, we got quite a few in the house today, so looks great that in life for a kind of a different topic that we have today. And so my name's Jean Wise. I'm a Christian nonfiction writer and one of the co-hosts here, and I'm going to turn it over to my co-host Johnny, and we'll get into today's topic too. Johnny, introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, we're so glad you're here. We invite you always to join us live every Tuesday at 10 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Eastern. If you're watching the replay, we're really glad that you're here doing that as well. Our topic this morning is sticky statements, and that was kind of a new term to me when I first heard about it, so I had to Google it to see exactly what that was all about, but it's really fun because it's, about quotes and memes and all that good stuff. So Jeannie, our co-host, is going to present that for us. Jeannie just gave a very brief little bio or intro, so I'm going to go a little bit deeper, a little bit. Jeannie and I first met at the Florida Christian Writers Conference in 2007, and this is just, the wonderful way God works sometimes. Yeah, 11 years ago.
Wow.
I was 12. She was sitting in the auditorium waiting for the first session to start for first-timers at the conference, and I walked in, and I didn't know anybody. She didn't know anybody either, and I was just really nervous, and it was my first major conference, and I sat in the chair in front of her and turned around and said, "Hi, I'm Johnny." She said, "I'm Jeannie. I'm from Ohio." I was born in Ohio, and it just took off, and we spent that whole conference together, made friends, other friends too, and that group of ladies have remained very close friends in all this.
Very special. Very special.
Yeah. So Jeannie is, my thing was fiction. Hers is nonfiction, and she has written devotionals. She's got several books out. She's very much involved in all things spiritual, as a spiritual director and doing those kinds of things. So it's just really great to have her as a very close friend, my conference roommate when we do end up going to conferences together. And today, the star of the show, talking about sticky statements.
This will be fun. I hope it's fun. And like I said, I don't think my presentation is not going to be the whole time. So feel free to chat in the chat room, and then when we bring everybody back on, I hope we have some conversation about this. This is a fun little thing I've been experimenting with this year. And I'm going to go to screen share. So let me pull this up. You know how that always takes a minute to get ready here. There you go. And
there you go. Well,
there, how's that? Yay! Does that look like I know what I'm doing?
Now, I will say I have lost the chat as this came up. So keep
Melissa,
your questions and all, and we will, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, we can get that. I don't know how when we do this how to keep the chat. There's a way.
I don't.
Maybe it's under more at the top. Can you see up at the top?
I have nothing now at the top.
Okay, sorry. All right. Well, anyway, you guys know me well enough, so I'm not going to go into an intro so much for me, but I want to tell you about what got me interested in sticky statements. And it was a statement that I heard the Christian writer Lisa Turgertz, who's written a lot of Christian nonfiction books, which she had said on a video. And she made the comment that if you want to be a good writer, you got to get the person to keep turning the pages. And if a person's not highlighting something you've written every couple pages, say in a book or in an article, or I would also throw out that as if you're listening in an audience, if you don't hear that, that's something, that little nugget of truth to keep going, you lose interest and you're going to put the book down and maybe never finish the book. A great deal of books are started and never finished. So it's like, it intrigued me. I says, well, how can we keep that listener, what is their underlining? What are they underlining? And Lisa calls them sticky statements. So that's why I came up with using that. And so that became one of my challenges as a writer this year, is how can I incorporate that more in both in my writing and my speaking? And can I learn more about it? And I think as writers, we're lifelong learners. And I think it's fun to pick that one little piece of our writing craft and get a little bit better at it from year to year to year. And so this is what was my 2018 challenge, was to get to know what sticky statements were and study about them and do some reading about them. And I got to present this to a group last week or the week before. And I said to Johnny in the group, I said, boy, that could be something I could share in Writer's Chat. So here we are. That's what kind of brought us together on that. So let's get into this. Now, what is a sticky statement? Sticky statements basically are a memorable sentence that transforms a person's thoughts, actions, and or beliefs. So there's a couple key things to that. It's memorable. So it's something that sticks in their memory and lingers in their heart. And I'm going to say that in a couple different ways here in the next couple slides. But it's also transformable. It isn't a cute little saying that you chuckle about it on Facebook, though it could be. But it also has to have the action that it transforms. Mm-hmm. It makes the person, we'll dig into this a little bit more in a minute on that. And you got to think, as writers, we use these wonderful ingredients called letters, A, B, C letters, and we put them together to make these wonderful things called words. And then the art and the craft is putting those words just in the right, picking the right word and putting them in just the right order to create a very powerful sentence that changes somebody or inspires them or stops like their negative thinking and gets them going on that. We've got, I just love words. I love crafting them, which I think most of you here today would be that way. I would think you would be. To me, I like the idea of sticky statements on that. So you can see in the second bullet, it's a second message that stands out. It inspires minds, influences hearts, and ignites souls. I love that. It's a Lisa Turgeon's quote definition of it. And I really think that's the way to do it, because no matter whether we're writing fiction or nonfiction, or whether we're speaking to a group, or whether we're even just writing a memo to our staff. I'm thinking of Robin in her office setting there, whether she's just writing a memo. If we can inspire, influence, and ignite, boy, isn't that what we want to do with the power of our words? A sticky statement is one that people repeat and it adds value. And I really like these three words of moving, motivating, and memorable, because it's moving implies the emotions, the feelings. And you're going to hear that all the way through this presentation today about the emotions and the feelings. And I'm thinking the longer I'm in this writing business, if we could tap that emotion in our listener or our audience, that's the connecting point behind the words that we're writing in our offices by ourselves. That is how we connect to the people. So it's moving the emotion. It's motivating them to some sort of action, some sort of movement. And I hopefully positive movement. I think we can use our words negatively, but I'm talking positive there. And it's memorable because it lasts long. It lasts and sticks around in their memory. It sticks. It's sticky. It's crafted and thought through and intentionally designed to have the audience or the reader highlight that sentence. And that's the art. We can learn all we can about the craft, using the right grammar, and I'll pick on Rhonda here, using the right WordPress tools, on that way. But if we could take these words and we become the artist then. In other words, that's what I mean by sticky statements. So think about proverbs or favorite quotes. You said, Johnny, you looked at quotes, didn't you?
Oh, I did. When I looked up statements, not knowing what it was, and it was talking about different quotes and things like that. Yeah. So that was really in how to be intentional. The one article I read was talking about being intentional. And you think about it. I absolutely love quotes. I use quotes. I'm the one that puts a lot of those quotes on our Writers Chat members page. And, I love quotes. Why don't we as writers write quotes? Why aren't we contributing
to what quotes are wonderful nuggets of wisdom that people could carry with them. They become sticky statements on that. So I did read sticky statements, and it was something I didn't add to this graph, but I think it's a neat way to remember it. I have the star quality, STAR, something they'll always remember.
Oh, that's great.
Isn't that a neat way to think about that? Something they'll always remember. And we could do that in all our forms of communication by stories, by some sort of drama, the conflict that you add to your fictional writing. If we're in a speaking situation, by a powerful visual, all those add star quality, but sticky statements is another way to build in both to writing and into our speaking to become memorable, to have the star quality. And I think that's a neat acronym. I'm going to share a couple other acronyms with you here in a minute.
I like that one.
Yeah, I do too. So why would you need sticky statements and when you would use them? And I'll go back to the thing that I said on the last slide, what the big reason is to inspire and to influence. I think you could add informed in there and transformed, so I think it's, it's got to have that. So where would you use them? You could use them in books and articles. I've given those examples, speeches, and I think memos. Think about a dry memo that you might get from somebody or a compilation of how to do something. We're going to change this in our organization. If it started with something inspirational and maybe concluded with, I'm more likely to read that, or read that sales slip, a sales sheet. You're trying to promote a book or something. If it had just that right sticky statement of the opening to hook me in or to the end, I just think that would add an awful lot. Now, I do want to put a qualifier here. I think you could overuse them. You sometimes could be a little cheesy with them, but I'm going to talk about the positive side mostly today. But you got to be warned on that. I think you could almost be too cutesy.
The article I read talked about that too, about not, like he said, popular ones, of course, are things that rhyme, but make sure even when you do a rhymey thing, that it's something that still is a message and means something. It's not just.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's part of that transformational, and tie it back to your key core message. You're not just going to stick them in to stick them in. But, one other place that I don't have on this slide that you could use sticky statements is on the bottom of notes that you send to people. Think about that. Often we're kind of stumble around at words if somebody's having a difficult time or it's a loss, and you send them a note or a get well. Just think if you had the right craft, the sentence there, how they close that card, and how that can stick with them and inspire them and maybe uplift their spirit if they're going through a difficult time. So
another one I thought of as you were talking was after your email signature, that you might put something there.
Ooh, that is a great place. I hadn't even thought about that. I'm writing that one down.
Well, and you do see that sometimes on, in forums and different things, and there are people that they always have the same little line underneath their name, and it's like, that could be a really powerful, and it says something about who they are, too.
Yes.
Like these are such anonymous people, you don't really know them, but a quote that's important to them, something about them from that.
Yeah. Or toasts. I was thinking about wedding toasts. You could use them and think about that. Or the class I'm taking for graduate school right now is on preaching, and I think if I could have a sticky statement that people would remember to take home from a sermon.
That was actually the article I wrote. He was a minister. He actually comes up with his sticky statements first, and then builds, like he kind of knows what the idea, and he kind of comes up with those, and then he sort of builds around them, and then gives them to his graphic team to make.
And that's part of the craft, isn't it?
To do all that kind of thing. It was really an interesting article.
That's good. It's good. And I'll tell you the other, and this is a cute little acronym to remember. And I do this when I teach about humor and health, how important humor is. But I think it works on the sticky statement. It's got to pass the AT&T rule. Okay. A standing for appropriate, T standing for timely, and the other T standing for tasteful. So a sticky statement has to be appropriate, used in an appropriate place and not overused. Has to be timely. You got to find just the right place to put them. And tasteful, that it's appropriate to the message, just kind of what you just said. So that's the AT&T rule. I think that's a neat way to kind of check yourself if it's getting too cheesy or overused on that.
Jeannie, before we've got so many good things going on in the chat.
Good. What's going on in the chat?
But let me. Yeah. Someone talked about about memes, and then Rhonda asked, "Can someone please define meme for her?" So,
well, I mean, it's kind of the visual pictures that you see, like on Pinterest, or inspirational, funny things that you see on Facebook. Would you describe that as a visual with a quote? Basically, isn't that kind of what we mean by memes, Johnny? Did you say that right?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I muted myself while I coughed. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Maybe I didn't. Yes, that is a meme. And I'm sorry for coughing on the air.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this sticky statements is based on a book called Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. I've read this book. I borrowed it from the library. It's not one I bought to put on my writer's shelf here, but it's a good one to borrow from the library. And it's looking at a lot of things in industries that why the marketing of that particular product stuck, why people remember where's the beef.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In the Wendy's, was it Wendy's commercial?
Yes.
Where's the beef?
Where's the beef?
And look how we remember that how many years later, so what was its stickiness? And they did all this research and they came up with these 6 principal ideas. And most sticky statements will have an element of most of these, not necessarily all of them all the time, but most of these. And if you take the first letter of all 6 of them, notice it spells success minus the last S.
Oh, it does.
Isn't that cute? I don't think a lot of people notice that they almost created their own, the principles almost became a sticky statement by how they did this. I thought that's clever. So I wanted to point that out. So I'm going to just spend a few minutes on each of these. And the first element is probably, it has to do with simplicity. And most sticky statements are pretty short and succinct and to the point, very easily to learn, short and succinct. And it's like, and this is what you were saying, Johnny, it's not linear. We have a tendency to put these words together linear and build our blog, build maybe the article we're writing in an outline or a sequential form. It's really more like what I put on there, like a wagon wheel. The sticky statement is that hub in the middle. That's the primary core message. Very simply said. And then all the spokes are the story, the teaching point, the illustration, how you build out from that. So that's a neat visual, I think, to think about a sticky statement. And it goes in the middle. It goes in the middle that way. Another characteristic is unexpectedness. So it kind of grabs the readers' attention because they didn't quite expect it. And I'm going to share some examples here in just a minute.
Oh, great.
You can see some, but this is an example those of us of a certain age might remember. Is John Kennedy in his State of the Union address. The atmosphere that was going on in the country at that time, and it was probably 60 or 61, probably 61. The atmosphere that was going on was everybody, it was the Cold War. Everybody, it was us versus Russia, and Russia had put Sputnik up in outer space, and we were behind in the space age. And he threw out this unexpected statement that we will put a man on the moon within a decade. And it really caught people's eyes.
Sure.
It also was, I'm going to jump down to number 4, very credible, because we also had a space program started. It was in its infant stage and wasn't doing very well, but it was credible enough to believe with a long enough concrete time. And it was also kind of concrete when you think about it.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah. So can you see how there he put that in his speech, but it was the unexpectedness that really grabbed people, because people had never, they were just trying to think of this little Sputnik circle in the earth, and he went beyond that to build the bitter dream that, no, we're not going to not just do that, we're going to the moon, folks. And I was really kind of pulled the country together behind the space program right now. It was a significant statement in
But
that
there
one.
was emotion in that too. Did
There
you?
was emotion, wasn't it? Think
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
It's like,
And
we can do this. Yeah.
we can do that. So it had a lot of those elements. And I think it's a good illustration for people. Now it's almost second. Oh, they sent up another rocket today.
I know.
Yeah, that's just amazing, amazing to me. But I did want to say something on the concreteness. You know, the human brain's not wired for abstract. It's really wired for visual, concrete things. And if you could come up with a right sticky statement that gives a visual, like a spoke in a wheel, that's a good visual. You know, if you can tie that to that, people that helps it stick. People will remember it on that way, because think Velcro, you know, where the abstract's hard, and we write abstract. It might be a spiritual. I write spirituality. That's an abstract concept. Yeah. Our relationship with God's a little bit abstract. If we could tie that to something concrete like gardening, you know, my relationship with God, he's the gardener and I'm the plant. You know, it ties it down. And I'll give some other illustrations of that in a few minutes. But, you know, see how if you can bring it out of its abstractness into this concreteness, that helps an idea stick. We talked a little bit about credibility. It's got to be somewhat believable. Sometimes you have to do that through trust. That's an idea too, a trustworthy thing. The emotions, definitely. You're going to hear me say emotions all the time. It's got to be something people care about. And then the last one, stories. Stories is always a wonderful spoke on the wheel. If you could tie it to a story, that may not be in the sticky statement, but it can add to the stickiness if you have a story on that way, you know. So that's kind of, you might be interested in picking that book up sometime if you haven't.
At least one person I think already has. I think I saw someone said they got it. And we have a suggestion for the last S, so it can be.
Okay, what's the last S? I want to hear that.
Succinct. Thank you, Elaine.
Yes.
And it's really good. Succinct.
That is good.
It has to be memorable, so it does have to be short and easy to remember. So yes.
Yeah, think of it as, well, we talk about the takeaway in our thing. What is the takeaway? And it's usually in a sentence. What is the listener or the reader going to get from this chapter? You have a takeaway, you have it succinct. I love the succinct. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, I do too. I like that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now, this is from Lisa Turkins. She's looking at 3 things a sticky statement does. And this is a nice way to kind of get an overview of them before we get into the specifics on how to do one. And notice how all 3 of hers start with an I, which is almost a neat little way to remember it. But anyway, she says a sticky statement interprets the feeling, there goes our emotion. It interrupts and redirects the thoughts. That means it really kind of digs into the person's thoughts and might cause that change. Well, hopefully it does transfer or cause that change. And then it becomes part of the conversation. It interjects into the conversation. And I'm going to unpack these just a little bit here. But let's say interprets the feeling the audience or reader has, but one they have difficulty expressing. You guys are readers. I know you guys are readers. You all been like I have been, where you a book and you underline that statement, said, she got it. That's what I feel exactly. I'm in a group right now. We're reading Barbara Brown Taylor, Learning to Walk in the Dark, I think, or Live in the Dark. Learning to Walk in the Dark, I think is its title. I cannot tell you how each chapter she'll explain something. I think, I've been there. It's that connecting point. Lisa describes this as the aha. I describe it as, yeah, it's the connecting point. But you can do that both fiction and nonfiction. If it's good descriptive writing, if you get down to that core emotion, what the writers experience, or a universal emotion, can you see how it interprets the feeling? It names it. And as writers, we should be able to do that. That's the ideal we're going for. And that's got me energized this year in my writing, to add that depth to my writing, to get to that core feeling and explain it and illustrate it in such a way. And I'm not there in all my writing, but that's where I want to be. It Number two, it interrupts and redirects the thoughts of the person. It makes me stop and think, yes, that's it. They'll think about that quote all day. It lingers with them. That's when you have transformation. I'm going to give you an example. You guys know, and I've talked about this before, I'm a Weight Watcher. And this battle to lose all of this weight, and I have lost pretty much, but I still have more to lose. It's so frustrating because it takes so long. And then I heard this quote at a Weight Watcher meeting that stopped my thinking and redirected my thoughts. And this is how it goes. Take pride in how far you have come and have faith in how far you can go.
Mm.
I literally wrote that down. I put that on my phone as my screen. So, but listen to it one more time. You can hear it. It's short, succinct. It's got what they call the echo effect.
Mm-hmm.
The two phrases echo each other.
So that helps you remember it because
it helps you remember it. Yeah. And it, like you said, it became almost an anchor for me it motivated me to keep going. And that's a transformational thing. That's a redirect. It is take pride in how far you have come and have faith in how far you could go. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And then notice it also becomes number 3. Yeah, it becomes shareable.
Mm-hmm.
It ejects into the communication. And I'll give you another example of number 3. When I was head of our county health department I worked public health for 26 years, but I was head of the county health department for 16 years. And a book was out, which many of you might remember, about helping, especially in the workplace, people deal with change. And it was called Who Moved My Cheese?
Oh, yeah.
I remember how many people removed that. I'm telling you that we read that, and it was a story of 4 mice maybe, and how they were dealing with change. And it was basically, hey, who moved my cheese? What are you doing moving my cheese? It was all those emotions, number 1, that we were dealing with. It made us stop, and it became shareable. You would not imagine how often when a change came along, and change occurs all the time within families or in workplaces or within the publishing world.
Yep.
All the time. I'm off the topic here real quick, but in case if you've ever published books on CreateSpace, they made the announcement today that they're merging CreateSpace and Kindle Direct Publishing. They merged them today, so it's change is always occurring in publishing. But anyway, that became the slogan, who moved my cheese? Somebody would say that to somebody else, and they'd start laughing. They go, oh yeah, oh yeah. I saw one of the ladies I worked with, we worked together 20 years ago. I saw her just the other day, and I said, Donna, how are things going with you? And she says, oh, pretty good, Jeannie. People are still continuing to move my cheese.
Oh.
20 years after we had said that, it became still part of the conversation. Now that is a title that became a sticky statement. Isn't that a wonderful example, I think? So think about sticky statements, that they interrupt the feelings, they interpret the feelings, they interrupt the conversation and make some sort of transformation, and they become shareable. I think that's a really neat way when you're looking at forming a sticky statement, which we're going to do next, how to create it. But you look at it, those are guidance to have, to check yourself.
It does go back to the whole memes, because what are we doing on Facebook? We're sharing those, and people are looking at images now more than they're looking at just a post without an image. Posts with just text aren't paid that much attention to. So
and they do that with Proverbs, even the book of Proverbs. Some of those, think of how old that book of Proverbs are, and they're still shareable, and they ground people. They give them an anchor for
their wisdom.
Yeah, their wisdom.
Style.
Yeah, and we could probably put that in there. I think these sticky statements all contain some element of wisdom that we see truth in, that we hang our hats on, and it changes our behaviors. We have to sense that somehow. Okay, some things on how to create sticky statements. These are just some guidance I threw together from a lot of different resources, but I'll give a Lisa Turget's example here in a little bit too. But we've talked about emotion. Think about that emotion. And what I would do on that is I would think I've discovered it's not always the first emotion you think it might be. And what I would do is I'd get a blank sheet of paper out and write what I thought the emotion might be on the top, and then write other emotions underneath. And we're going to talk about powerful verbs and verbs and nouns in a minute. But I would just start writing feeling emotions down, and it's probably going to be number 7 or number 12. That's the one. That's the one.
That's going to work. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to unpack it a little bit. What is that feeling behind that emotion or need that your listener or your reader has? What are you unpacking? So spend some time on that. That's part of the art and the craft that we're going to do on that. You mentioned, Johnny, about the core message that you read in that article.
Yes.
That is. And how often do we have an agent or an editor say, tell me what your book is about in one sentence? If you could do that and add some of the stickiness to it.
That's a great idea.
I think this is a win-win.
Yeah.
That editor may sit there and say, no. And then back at the editorial board a month later, they're sitting there saying, we need a book on. And he said, I know just exactly. And he'll be able to repeat it because it was sticky. So I think we ought to make those one sentence things in our book proposals or to our agent a little bit more sticky. I think that might be a real key. So I found a couple acronyms, and these overlap a little bit, so bear with me a little bit, but you can see that one is cream and one is preach. And they're just clever ways to think about that. The C in cream stands for contrast. So sometimes you could take two contrasting ideas and put them together, like the past or the future, light and dark, rich or poor, truth or lies, laughter or sorrow. See how you could take two contrasting, make the first one the first part of the sentence, this one the second part. So think contrast. Not quite opposites, because it's not always opposites. Sometimes it can be a little bit closer than that. But anyway, contrast on that. Think rhyme, and like Johnny, you said, you got to be careful with a little bit of rhyme. But sometimes you can put some rhyming words to that would help. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. That's close right off without being too rhymey, too poetry on that. Think echo, and we mentioned echo, is that sometimes if you have two phrases that are similar but kind of repeat, they might repeat one word or one word that starts with the same letter, which leads us to the alliteration, the A, there on that way, makes a difference. It could be a powerful way to help people remember a little bit longer one, too. It helps it make it stick.
Can I interject real quick?
Yeah.
It's not quite an echo, but it sort of is. But you think of a lot of the Proverbs, both in the book of Proverbs and other just, like folk Proverbs. And I think in the Psalms too, you have that parallelism,
That's right.
It's a contrasting parallelism. Like, I can't even come up with one, but I don't know. So it's like the good and then the opposite.
Yes. An evil man does this, but the good man does
this. Right. And then sometimes they're both like the same, but just said in very different words. But I mean, you can just read through the book of Proverbs and some of the Psalms, and you'll see great examples of these kinds of things, or just these very little standalone messages.
Correct. And the R in both these words, not just rhyme, but could be rhythm. And I think you're even talking on kind of a rhythm, a cadence to a line.
Yes.
So that's a way to think about it. And can you see how the art has to come, how you have to play with words to try to work with some of this on that? Alliteration. Johnny, you and I both love alliteration on that way. It can be overused, but I love alliteration. I have a tendency to overuse it. I have to rein myself in on that a little bit. But, did I skip echo? I skipped echo.
No, we talked about echo.
We talked about echo. I have an example of echo here. Fixing our mind on Christ fixes our mind. There's a shorter echo. Yeah. See how that echoed? It's also an alliteration, isn't it? Here's another alliteration. Your boldest moments are your best moments.
Mm-hmm. That boldest and best.
Yeah. And let's see, I want a metaphor. We're going to talk about metaphors here just a little bit more in a minute. So I'm going to come back to metaphors, but a metaphor is part of that concreteness. It just engages the person's imagination, and I think it helps them remember it more too. Gives them a picture,
Yeah.
a visual to go on that way. You can see the word preach. It's a little bit of the poetic that we've talked about. Is there a right word in that we could use? You are the light of the world might be an example on that way. It's puts a picture to it too. Rhyme, we talked echo, alliteration. We talked about the contrast, and we can't forget hook. And that I think, is it something that matches your book and brings your reader in, on that. Here's one. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. How about that in a fiction book to hook the reader?
Yeah.
It's a line we all know, Tale of Two Cities. Am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Tale of Two
Cities.
Okay. You just say that. People know it. Or if I would have not given that away and said, who in the chat can tell me the first line of the Tale of Two Cities, somebody would have had it. Right? It's a sticky statement. Dickens was doing this centuries ago. Duh. And we remember him. Duh. That should be our inspiration on that way. So anyway, that's the right kind of hook. A sticky statement is a hook. Yeah. On that way. And remember, it just can't sound good. It's got to be memorable. It's got to be shared. It's got to have some sort of tangible. It's got to help them. It's got a transformation somehow in that. I want to give you an example of, I thought Lisa Turkis had a good one here at the bottom. It says, the scale can measure my physical weight, but never my worth as a woman. Isn't that a neat? See, of course, that's my Weight Watcher identifying with that a little bit on that.
But you've also got, the alliteration there is like weight, worth, woman. You've got those similar sounds in there, and it
definitely has the emotion in it too.
Definitely does.
Yeah. So it doesn't always have to rhyme.
No.
It can be very similar on that, and it's also the core message. It takes us a while to get to that core message. I think we have to work on that. But think about that. I think that's the core message for her book that has the word craving. Craving, I don't know. It's over there someplace. Craving. It's got the word craving in it. It's her book. That's her core message in her craving book. So you got to think, see how powerful it can be on that way. There is a little bit of formula, but I think, again, it's going to be what works for you. So I'll give you, we'll run through this one fairly quickly. And you're not going to always have all these elements, but I think if you step back as you're working on them and think about some of these, is your core message. We kind of talked about that. Get that down to one sentence. We haven't talked about who you're trying to reach, your target audience, but we've talked about that on other writers' chats, things about knowing who your core audience is. We've talked about with Bob writing on the, who's that? Bob Benson, Robert Benson.
Dancing on the head of the pin.
Dancing on the head of the pin. Robert Benson says he has his jury of 12.
Yeah.
So you know who you're talking to. I think if you at least think about that, it doesn't always have to be obvious in a sticky statement, but if you're thinking about that I think that would help in your sticky statement. What is the felt need? You've got to know the felt need of the audience that you're trying to reach, and the emotion behind. We talked about really working through. It's often not that first emotion. And then what's the consequence of the problem? We haven't talked about that, but I'm going to give you an illustration at the bottom of the slide on that. Sometimes that's something, if you can identify that could add some power to your sticky statement. And then you write it, and you rewrite it, and you rewrite it. You really work that sticky statement. If we would take the time to do that for every sermon, every talk, every book, every article that we write, I think it would add an element to, I'm just really sold on this, guys, to add that element of depth and inspiration that we need in our writing on that way. Here's Lisa's example, and this is from The Best Yes, which is a wonderful book study if you've never done it. I've led that book study twice now in our church. And this is what I will tell you, the one group I lead it with till this day says, is that my best yes? Till this day, and then we did that 5 years ago. They still are using that. That's how shareable and memorable it has. They'll check each other on that. It's kind of like who moved my cheese thing. But this is Lisa's example. A woman, there's her target audience, who lives with the stress of an overwhelmed schedule, there's your felt need, will often ache with the sadness, there's your emotion, of an underwhelmed soul, there's your consequence. Can you kind of see how those all kind of go together? And look, the contrast between overwhelmed and underwhelmed, the alliteration schedule or soul, I just say it, stress is in there, sadness is in there. Look, it's a really good statement to kind of hold up, maybe inspire somebody to work with that. So I think this is a good formula about to think through as you put it together on that. So I want to share a couple more tips, and then we'll kind of
share a little bit of
yeah, do that.
Josh says that's true for men too.
That is true, but her target audience happens to be women.
Her target audience is women.
Yes.
Another little thing, I mean, because this is very good, and I love the way you broke it up, that she hits all these things. The
You're not going to use them all the time.
The need, the consequence of that, but it's long and it's not necessarily very easy to remember. But what you can remember is an overwhelmed schedule leads to an underwhelmed soul, and that you can fit on an image and on Pinterest and on a meme and start sharing that. And so it doesn't have quite the poetry and quite all the elements, but yet it's a snappy part. So you might
wouldn't that be a good marketing tool? Now
exactly.
So you might marketing.
Two different things. You do the longer one, which you have, where that would fit, but then you sort of can have the snappier ones too.
Yeah.
To share out and hope people will share. So
right. I love that. I love that. It's a great example. Okay.
And then Melissa rewrote it so it is for men and women. We love you guys in the chat.
I love it. I can't see the chat, but
I know it's really fun.
109 messages. You guys are really chatting.
There's a lot going on in there.
There's a lot going on. I have to go back and read them later.
Yeah.
Just a couple more tips. And you guys as writers know the power of words. And so vivid words, strong verbs, be word collectors, be noun, I don't want to say it, noun practitioners, word painters. Think about that. There are so many beautiful, a couple things I have is I collect sheets of paper that says power words on it. I keep this nearby, so when I can't quite find the word I'm after, I pull sheets like this out that's got samples on that. I write words down that might, you know your genre. I know words that spiritually move people. I keep a list of some of those words, on that way. Keep a list of your strongest and favorite verbs. When you see a good action word, it could be in a book that Johnny Alexander wrote.
That's right.
I can sit there and say, there's that action verb. I'm going to add that to that. So collect these. As writers, collect these on that way. I want to say, we could put those in the chat. That would be fun to maybe put in the chat some of their favorite action verbs, zing or pop.
And those are fun because they kind of sound like that.
They got a word, onomatopoeia
kind of thing.
Yeah, you could say that.
But this isn't just true for sticky statements. I mean, you should be using vivid words. You should be using active verbs, strong nouns in your writing.
In all your writing. And we kind of know that, but we can bring that skill over to sticky statements in that way. Metaphors fascinate me. Barbara Brown Taylor is beautiful in her book, the use of metaphors, and that's really gotten a hunger in me to use those a little bit more because they are concrete, they're a connecting point, and we talked, that's where contrast can be used. You could take something from the abstract and bring it down to the level to what our human brain will see and absorb. This is a quote you've heard in a couple different ways, but we remember 20% what we hear. We remember 80% what we hear and see. But when the images are vivid, we remember 95%.
Oh, wow.
That really jumps. See, you guys, we are powerful as writers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can change the world through our words. We really can. And I'll go back, I'm going to quit preaching here, but it goes back to the word of God. God is the word, and we are his vehicle to help get his word out. I just think we have to be transformational in our writing. We just really do.
Yeah.
A couple examples, a couple of things on metaphors, and then I'm going to wrap up here so we could talk on things. I'm going to jump here. Is look for similarities in the metaphor. For you could look at an activity versus activity. You dig down to the you weed in your garden, you might weed the sin from your life. Look at activity to activity. You can look at things to things, the bugs in your garden versus the stuff that irritates you. You see what I mean by that. You look for similarities. You try to relate two similar but unrelated topics. Again, gardening, parenting. It's got to have some sort of universal thing that the person can identify with it. Traveling's always good. The spiritual journey I use a lot in as an example of metaphor on that way. And try to find a detail about your metaphor that's fascinating. And this goes back to trivia. Sometimes you can find something in trivia or something that you know about the smell of bread. I can't think. I'm going to read you one here as a good example, kind of an odd example, but but you could use something about specific detail about whatever you're trying to connect and relate that over. The smell of bread would be an example. The smell of bread in the morning, whatever. Here's an example of somebody who is critiquing somebody's blog post. And she wrote, her blog post tasted like bland potatoes, slightly burnt without salt. Nobody read beyond the first 3 sentences.
Oh my goodness, wow.
But notice how the metaphor, she took something very specific describing bland potatoes and related it to it. So it's a kind of an odd example.
You're not going to forget that either.
You're not. And I do, because I want to have some time for some chatting here. Don't forget books like your thesaurus, This is can you tell how worn it is? This is a flip dictionary. I use this baby all the time for inspiration.
Okay, Jeannie, hold it up again for those who are watching the thing, just to make sure.
I call it, it's the flip dictionary is what I use.
Okay.
I use that all the time. Basically it's a thesaurus. I use a rhyming dictionary. I keep that right by. Sometimes I get inspiration from the rhyming words. I find the other words. I mentioned this book a couple weeks ago. I picked this up, Words That Sell. It's got lists of powerful words when you try to communicate something. And there is a web page down at the bottom there of a person who it's a little video. It's short video. It talks about the power of action words. So I did want to refer to that. I had seen that the people that I did this presentation for last week had talked about that. So that's one reason why I mentioned that. And I'm going to end with just a couple examples here. And I wanted for you, Johnny, you wanted to have a fiction example besides electricity. Here's Crime and Punishment. The darker the night, the brighter the stars.
I like that.
Yeah, on that way. An inspirational quote from Corrie ten Boom: worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength. You can see the great echoing in there, and how they use the word empty and tomorrow and today, sorrow and strength. You can see a lot of what we talked about. And this Chip and Dan Heath is a quote from the Sticky book, Made to Stick book. The great thing about the world of ideas is any of us with the right insight and the right message can make an idea stick. So that's my inspiration to you guys on sticky statements on that way. And I hope it just makes you remember that writing's an art too. And then I think each year we could take an element of it and refine our art. Michelangelo always did that. He took an element of his sculpting and learned a new aspect of it. Tried that. I'm going to pull back out so we can.
Well, I popped a book up real quick, and I wanted to show it again
Yeah.
because it was like really fast for the replay. This
Oh,
is
there you go.
the thesaurus, and it really isn't going to give you a thesaurus of different emotions. What it does tell you is like if a person is experiencing pride, some of their physical signals, internal sensations. That so it's not quite appropriate maybe for this, but it is a really good, it's a good book, and you might get some ideas from looking at it. So
Yeah, on
because
that.
I popped it up, I want in case someone on the replay wondered, this is what it is.
Right, there you go. That's good.
Yeah.
And I see Rhonda said we got to watch cliches, though.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
absolutely.
I agree. And that's part of that caution. I think you could overdo this, and so you gotta use your head too. But I just like to. I think we could capture hearts by using our head, maybe
Yeah.
on that way. And now I could see the chats.
Well, I want to pull out a couple things. Elaine said that someone once called her, I love this, a choreographer of dancing words. And she considered that one of the best compliments. And it is, Elaine, that is a wonderful thing for someone to say about your writing. And it's a beautifully written thing for that person to have said. So, yeah, that's kudos to you for that. That's really cool.
And there is a dance to that. Mm-hmm. And each dancer, and I would hope each writer would bring in their own stuff too. So it isn't a cliche, for example. Right. It becomes your own style and your own element instead of looking like a canned cha-cha.
And then a few people, Melissa's here, she saves words in her own dictionary thesaurus, categorized by emotion or theme or even period. That's a great idea. And I think they did that too. And Joshua mentions he creates, he has that shareable quote gallery on his website. And yeah, I remember when he showed his website last week or a week or two ago, and it was wonderful, and thinking, ooh, that's an idea I want to steal from my website, is to have that shareable quote gallery.
It's a great idea.
Great idea.
It's a great, and be sure some of those quotes are your own quotes.
Absolutely.
It does not have to be all famous people, Charles Dickens and Corrie ten Boom. It's got to be, sprinkle some of those in your own quotes. Why not? We're writers, folks. On that way. Johnny, do you want to invite people in and have any final conversation? We got about 5 minutes left.
Come on, and also those on the replay would not have seen the chat. The Lisa Turker's book is called Made to Crave.
Made to Crave. Yep, that's it.
Someone knew that, so and gave it to her.
That's it, because that would really summarize that. And like I said, she's the one I originally heard. I would need to give her the credit for that, about sticky statements. And then when I heard it, I thought, that's what I want to work on. And that's what got me interested this year. Just been working on it off and on, and on that. So I'm going to change so I see people better. There you go. Now I can see the whole group. Now we look like Brady Bunch.
And we have hurting brains, and in here too. You guys, I love the chat. You guys are so fun.
Yeah. And if you can't come back on, because like I said, sometimes we say this every week, but if you haven't, if you're trying to come back on, you can't come back on, just say it in the chat, because we have to release you if we've taken you off. But you might be all right, on that way. So anybody do this? I'm just curious. Anybody write sticky statements or have heard of them before?
People think you're great. I'll tell you that. A lot of positive, wonderful things in the comments about you.
Thank you.
I didn't know they were sticky statements, but I tend to gravitate towards them. I always that's kind of what I do, sort of. Yeah, but I didn't know they were called sticky statements.
Me either, Brandy, but yeah, they're quotes. They're fun quotes.
Yeah.
Memorable.
And then, like you said, you make them. That's the difference. But I think they can help us in so much. Just our book proposals. Think about that. Or the speech, or like I said, a memo, a boring memo. Think if you could take that just into your home, to a family meeting, and say it to your kids. I don't know.
There's one thing I have like little tea bags by Yogi Tea, and they have little sticky statements on them. But the thing that really irritates me is that most of them are not true. They're like some abstract idea of humanity, and they really, I end up throwing most of them away. Every once in a while I'll find one, I'm like, oh yes, But I think that's one thing about sticky statements. They have to be true or resonate truth. Otherwise, they're just not going to connect with your reader.
That's right. That's right. Well, think about marketing now. See, if that would be appropriate for you to market that with your book, you could do your own line of sticky little statement tea bags.
That's right.
That's right. I have a friend.
Fortune cookies are the original sticky statements.
Ooh. Whoa.
Actually, I think Proverbs are. Fortune cookies.
Proverbs probably are. You're right.
Hopefully ours have better grammar than fortune cookies.
Yeah, I didn't even say anything about grammar. Notice that.
Yeah.
No, we could have gotten into that because you could think you've crafted just the right sticky statement and have that phrase in the wrong place and totally change or leave the comma out. What is it? Let's eat, Grandma. Is that the famous thing about the comma? Let's eat, Grandma. On that way. Any other comments before we wrap up the video portion?
I was going to say, Jean, it seems to me that we as believers need to get better at this. I'm really good at quoting the Bible, and that's great, and that's important. But I think that sometimes people with the opposite viewpoint of ours do this better than we do. And it's an area where I think we need to catch up and realize that even a biblical statement can be rewritten in a pithy way that has biblical truth that is memorable. And I'm challenged to feel that I should start looking to do this better.
Very good. I think that's true. And we can help people too. Those of us that do any like teaching or leading in our churches, I think help other people learn to articulate their faith that way too. It's be a neat way, and not just that our faith doesn't distill down to 6 short, quick words, but it helps us share our faith too. Yeah, it's a very good point, Rhonda. Very good.
Rachel had a good point in the chat where she said she was pulling quotes out of her posts. You know, the tweet this plugin that you put in there and you can tweet things. We could use that for sticky statements and then reuse them to create graphics, memes to post on our Instagram accounts. And that would be a great way to reuse that stuff you're already writing.
Yeah.
I actually just started doing that, Tina, where I'm taking one sentence from each post and making it into a meme that is part of the post. Mm-hmm. So I just started that, though. I don't know if it'll get any traction or not. But.
It's great.
It's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Use all sorts of social media, that's for certain.
And it's used in marketing too, where authors will create memes with sticky statements that are actually phrases from their book. And they have a whole bunch of them that they create all at once and then post them strategically and have their book launch people post them.
Yeah.
It's a way to get the word out. And I just go back to our book proposals. Can you imagine if you had just the right sticky statement there? Not only does the editor remember it, but the marketing department would take that and run with it. I think the visual might lead to the cover. You know, there's all sorts of things that could have the benefits if you craft the right one on that way. Well, Johnny, it's noon. You want to wrap up?
Noon, yes.
Or noon or Eastern.
For being here. Well, yeah. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. And next week we're gonna see how this works. Rhonda's gonna come back, and we're going to have her, and I think Bethany's gonna be on here too. They're gonna critique 2 websites online or on the episode. So we will be screen sharing a couple people's episodes. Those 2 people will be getting feedback on their website from Rhonda and from Bethany, and we're just going to see how it goes. In addition to that, we are also still talking about doing a separate kind of writer's chat special episode, or just something where we'll be critiquing each other's websites, and there's going to be a larger group involved in that. So anyway, stay tuned for that. Don't forget to be reading Jab, Jab, Right Hook. I forget exactly when that discussion is, but it's sometime in September, I believe. So you want to be, I'm sorry, Melissa?
September 25th, I think.
Okay, September 25th. So you want to be, have read that book and be prepared for that open mic discussion too. So thanks for all for being here. Jeannie, this was wonderful.
It's been fun.
It was really fun. And it's just, I think we do love those images, love memes, love quotes. And we can make them. We can create our own and start sharing them.
Anyway, well, thank you for putting up with us today. And
We'll
see you on next Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central here on Writers Chat. See you next week, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.